Okay, so we have MTT session hand history review today with Maniac from the poker strategy. So if you want to give some representation of yourself first.
Okay, hello everybody. My name is Maniac or Benny, and I play poker around about 12 years. I started with fixed limit and then pretty rapidly changed that to playing sit and goes first and first I played 9-mans, then fixed max. Then I changed to turbos, super turbos, and now I literally play every SNG format that is out there. And the next step for me is to learn something about MTTs. And I've never had a MTT coaching. I've done some in SNGs, so I'm looking forward to learn more about my adaptations from SNG to MTT and. Hopefully, I can develop my game a little bit more and grind it up there too.
Okay, so I actually removed my webcam from the stream because it seems like we right away started to drop the frames because I have the Skype connection to Maniac as well, so I won't have the webcam here. It's not important to screw the quality of the stream. So let's start with the hands here.
Okay.
So yeah, the HUD is pretty much here. I don't have the explanation for it now, but we can show it when there is some need or talk about it. Okay, so here we are open raising. I think 3x sizing with these stack depth and early position is reasonable.
Excuse me for a sec. My frame rate in the Skype dropped recently a little bit, and I see just a very bad quality. I don't know if it's on your end or on my end, but I see a good quality at the YouTube channel and a worst quality at the Skype window.
I think it's best that I end the.
Yeah.
And you can use the stream from the YouTube. There will be like minor delay, but it should be just a second or a couple seconds. So.
Okay, yeah, sure. That's no problem at all. I can use the stream, but then I have a little delay, but it should be fine. Okay.
Okay, so here we definitely want to three bet with the queens, and I think sizing wise this is really dry flop, so I would personally make like 200 or so here.
Yeah, of course. Betting should be like a function of board texture, so 1/3 to a little bit more 1/3. Yeah, this is probably too much. I sometimes go for bigger Conti bets because if I knew that he is kind of fishy, I just bet post flop more as I would bet pre-flop more to just commit him easier and get the money comfortably in. So this is the reason why I c-betted larger here in this board.
Yeah.
Is this okay or
no? Well, if you have a read, you can of course try to exploit with the bet sizes, but as default, I will tend to go with similar sizing whatever I have the value hand or I am bluffing or so on. But of course, if you have like calling matching read, then you want to be using less bluffing in the betting range and making it bigger can make sense. And yeah, here we can stack off With deeper stacks, I would probably more often tend to call, but with these stack depths, it's totally fine to just shove as well.
Yeah.
And Willen had 10 jack tier, which is pretty horrible.
Yeah, but this is why these limits are so profitable. They stack off pretty light.
Okay, there's nothing to talk about. And yeah, we can't really do anything against 5 PP open.
Yeah.
So I will go through these sort of clear fold spots quite quickly, so we can get through more of the hands. And in here, yeah, we can't really do much in the 4-way pot, and when he pots, it's easy fold. Easy fold here. And in here, we definitely want to complete. If we had offsuit King 7, it's not a crime to fold, but I would complete that as well, because we are pretty deep stack, and basically my aim is to hit. If I have like offsuit King 7, I will mainly aim for like 2 pairs for big pot, and if we have just a single pair left, then try to pot control somewhat.
Yeah, of course. I would, if I see this now, I would complete this too. Any suited king, any suited ace, of course. Lots of the suited queens, maybe all of them, but certainly all of them, and then yeah, the odds are ridiculous.
Yeah. So what about the river? We have called the flop turn goes check check.
Yeah. I think a river is not a value bet, because I adjust the value down myself with it, so I have too much showdown value too. So I think betting is a bad idea here.
Yeah, it's clear. It's pretty clear check, and most of the time you can check fold against reasonable bets. But if he bets like really small, you can try to call it down.
Do you think, let's say I bet, I don't know, 2/3 of pot, does it make sense to fold out baby flushes?
Well, you want to think about the general range, like what sort of checking range you have here, because a good portion of time you will be likely betting stronger flushes yourself for value as default, so you can't really check fold that many flushes in general, unless Willen goes like really big sizing, like pot or overbot. Because, and thing is that you shouldn't. Well, actually, you can have quite a lot of mini small flushes, as this was limp pot, but yeah. But most of the flushes you should be check calling. But okay. This is pretty clear check hand and fold most of the time at least. And if you have here, like, let's say, I might consider turning like 10x to bluff, because that is kind of close to the bottom of your range. And of course, then if you have any sort of busted straight draw, it's great hand to be bluffing here. And I would tend to use something like 160, 180 sizing quite often. And
yeah,
for people watching, if you have any feedback, like is the stream working well or not?
Of course. Right now it's a little bit laggy. I have to refresh it, I guess. It sometimes went off and on. Yeah. I'll try to refresh my window.
Yeah, it's kind of tricky, because I have only the 4G connection here, so.
Yeah, this is. It's not by cable, right? It's just by satellite, so it's like a handy connection, my mobile phone connection. Yeah. Or how does it work?
It's mobile, so sort of. It's on my router, but it's just through the 4G.
Okay. But actually, you can do this with the. You live in Finland. Is this correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But actually, at least you can do this. We in Germany have some places where there's like nothing. Like you can't get anything there. So there you can you can have it's internet from the telephone, and the satellites don't cover these spaces. You can't have internet at some places in Germany. It's kind of ridiculous if you tell this to anybody.
Yeah. So anyway, this hand, I would say that check call is definitely the option to go. It's a really dry flop, so it's hard to have much of check raising range in general, in a way that what sort of hand are you going to use as bluff. So it's also three-way pots that the villain is betting here, so I definitely like check calling here, especially when you have like no kicker with the 10. And villain continues to bet, so how do you respond here? Are you check calling or raising?
Yeah. Well, it depends. I would say check calling is pretty nice because he is likely to fire a third barrel. I would choose it if I look at his stack. The goal has to be to get him all in. And if I call here, the pot is likely to be 1,400, so I have to overbet to get it all in, and I don't want to actually do this. So I like a pretty small raise here to shove river, because I don't know how aggressive he is, and if I don't know that, I'm likely to bet myself the river. So yeah, I like a small raise and shove the rest on the river.
Yeah, that's one possibility, but it can be somewhat thin depending of the opponent, because what sort of hand is he going to be betting here and stacking off? So, and one thing you want to consider also is that if you are check raising every 10x possible, then your check calling range will be pretty weak here. So because of that, I would tend to just check call here again and check river, and use the hand as calling against the third barrel if there happens to come that.
Okay.
Because yeah, like is he going to stack off here with if he has like, I don't know, pocket sevens or something? He might be, of course, but it can be kind of questionable if the villain happen to be somewhat decent.
Okay. So how do you determine this this decision? Do you how do you know how many hands do you want to call on the sport, or how many you've said that your calling range is weak if I raise every 10x. So how do you know that the range is weak? Do you just know, okay, I will call on this sport, this and that hands?
Yeah, this was, you get the free flop from the big blind, so of course you can have like a lot of 4x here. You might call some pocket pairs, of course, but I mean, if you are raising every 10x or better hand, then top of your range will be like something, maybe like pocket sevens, a lot of 4x's, maybe some AX with the backdoor draw from the flop, perhaps. So it's going to be relatively weak hand compared that if you think about those hands, that how happy you are going to check call the turn and check call the possible river barrel. So if you think like that, then most of those hands are not that great, especially as this is really dry flop. So will lane barreling 3 street is usually pretty strong here. So by keeping some of the 10x in the check calling range, you will strengthen the range that you have clear check calling hands, at least sometimes in your range.
Okay.
Then if you want to check raise some 10x's and such, then you can use the ones that have the better kicker, because you will still have like queen 10 here, maybe king 10, that type of bigger 10x's that will be beating a bigger portion of his value range as well. So
okay, but don't we choose now a balanced strategy for a player who is likely to be? Okay, he's an unknown, but if he would be if he is a fish and we know that, then we should probably pay for max value and try to get it in somehow, is this correct? Or do you always would play a balanced line, or is this just your default line?
Yeah, most of the time I would play, because like well, you quite rarely have like specific enough read about the opponent that you can't say that he's never bluffing, for example, or that so on. So by keeping some of the 10x's here as passive check calling line, you also allow the will lane to bluff the first time if he happens to be that sort of player. And I mean, again, if he's sort of more passive, that we can assume that he's value betting, he might be value betting river as well if he has like decent pocket pair or better. So so yeah, I kind of prefer to still, like against most opponents, to still have some 10x's in my passive line.
Okay.
I would tend to go for check here, because the thing is that of course you can bet here, you have huge equity in this board, but one of the problems in this sort of line is that your mate hand portion is not really strong here. So versus the range that gives action, your hand is not going to do that quite that well overall if you don't improve. So I would prefer to just check call here and go from here. You have some showdown value. The tricky part here is that, for example, if we bet here and we face sizable raise, it can lead into very tricky situations.
Yeah. So if I had literally no showdown value, let's say I had I don't know, 5 in 4-5 in spades, you would you're more inclined to bet. Is this correct?
Yeah, it would make more sense. You can also lead like Queen X type of hands here for value, and then have some balance in the range.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. If I'm getting this right, the problem is if I got a tricky post-flop situation in where Seshki puts it in, I have to calculate correctly if I can actually call this, and I might destroy my own showdown value because I have the 8.
Well, the thing is that against this stack depth, if he raises like to 500 or something, I think you are in a kind of situation that, well, folding is not really the option, because you can still assume that you often have flush outs and 2 pair trips out quite often alive, so
like
it will basically
14?
be like 14 outs.
Yes, that's correct.
So you can basically even stack a shove against him, and it's going to be plus EV.
How about check raising the flop then, or check shoving? If let's say Sashki bets, and do you think check shoving is an option? I think it's close because I'm not closing the action then.
Yeah, here's that, and also in general, I prefer to take the check calling option because you are still beating his semi-bluff hand with your late hand.
Yeah, okay, I see that. And the other thing is that I put voluntary money into the pot, and I'm not quite sure if I'm actually ahead or good with it. So I don't like to blow up pots out of position in MTTs like at all. I think it's always weird to play.
That's the tricky part here. Like if you bet here, either of the villain call from position, and you don't improve, you are going to be in kind of awkward situations that you have the best, that you might have the best hand, but you can't really like value bet it anymore. And then if you check and face like really big bet, it can lead into nasty situations overall.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
Okay, and hi to Lapis, and not sure what the second name is. Ixlak.
This is actually my YouTube nick, and it's Ich lach mich weg, and it means basically I'm laughing I'm laughing off with a kind of lol in German.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think this is quite close. Like, I think you can go either way from the UTG. Folding is fine and raising is fine, but at least like pocket 8, you have to play from the UTG as well. But I don't mind the open fold.
I agree.
Like the smallest pocket pairs, you can just fold right away. But I think pocket 6s start to be on the sort of gray area.
Yeah, I'll raise at least 8, and dependent on the table, I'll get tighter or will be looser depending on the big blind and the button mostly, and then I'm looking small blind and cutoff.
Okay, here I would personally go for ISO raise. You can go for like 350, 400. We have seven hands on this guy, and he has 70 BPIP, so there is going to be shitload of crap in his range.
How much do you ISO? 400 or 350?
It's fine either way, but I think like 300 with the Andy, it starts to be a bit on the small side, so 350, 400, that's fine.
Yeah, the thing is that I tend to ISO raise more the closer I'm onto the button, you know, because if I ISO raise, I want to have position, and I don't have a feeling how from which position an ISO raise is really an ISO raise, you know, because the games, the micros, MTT micros are so loose, they are overcalling a lot of my ISO raises. If I'm ISO raising a ton, then I create big pots out of position for me.
Yeah, that's true, but I think Ace 9 shooter is still going to be strong enough here from that position.
Okay, how much do you ISO rate there then? About 12%, 15%?
Yeah, I would say that something like Ace 8 shooter plus Ace 10 off plus pocket 6s plus or so.
Yeah, okay.
And then some of the Broadway like King Jack, King Queen, Queen Jack suited.
Yeah,
something
I
like
can
that.
See that. Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, that will be full.
Do you still would ISO raise if the Super Carlo, the guy before, has also limbs? Can I actually ISO raise with 2 limbs in front? No, or is this an ISO raise then?
Well, yeah, it's still going to be iso-raised if there are multiple limbs, but of course you want to increase the sizing, and usually there is going to be more often action. So
Yeah, and I have to tie them up a little bit, or I can't just use the same range.
yeah, you want to tighten somewhat.
Yeah, okay.
Well. And here I would actually go for a bit smaller than 3 big blind sizing, because stacks are a lot shallower at this point. So you are basically like 30 big blind around that. So I would go like 2.5 big blind sizing. So if we face 3 bet, we usually don't want to stack off when raising this early position. So we get cheaper by that way.
Okay.
And at the same time, like the point that bigger sizing gives more value against the calls, that's not too relevant in a way that with these sort of stack depths you will have the chance to stack off post flop anyway, even if you use smaller sizing. So we get 2 callers. And we face min bet. So how do we react?
Okay, this was a question. I'm sorry. Yes, so there are different ways to react. I think we have a pretty strong hand. He just is checking with a bet. And I would like to see bet the same way as I would do if he didn't bet. So my c-bet sizing on this wet board is kind of close to half pot size. So I would choose a sizing round about 700, something like 700, 800. Probably something like this. I would raise in this case, and if he sticks it in, I think with this strong draw, I may go with it. Then
yeah, I think you have to stack off if you raise here. Well, one thing I often would think about in this situation is that how much fold equity I have against the villains. And this is very coordinated board, and we seem to be against 2 quite fishy looking opponents who are usually not folding too much. So I kind of prefer personally to take passive option here and just try to realize the equity, because I wouldn't really expect that either of them will ever fold like top pair, and probably not mid pairs either much. So because of that, okay. I would tend to make this for example a spot that I would very rarely try to bluff here and just play very value heavy raising range.
Okay.
But in general, okay. I don't mind this against more reasonable opponents necessarily.
Okay. I can see this.
But one thing, one thing you want to also consider, like how would we want to play if we had like overpair. Let's say that we had kings or aces. Because if you think about this sort of board and small blind and big blind range, they can have a huge amount of 2 pairs, some straights. So this is kind of flop that doesn't really favor our range that much. We never have 2 pairs. We probably might not even have like queen jack. I don't know if you open queen jack suited, but we never have like 7-6 pretty much, and well, sets is something that we can have. So this is kind of flop that, especially against good opponents, I would tend to play quite passively with those overpairs as well. But I think in micro games you don't need to think about stuff like that as much, because as I said, these guys probably don't fold that many hands, so we can definitely play for stacks even with like 1 pair overpairs quite happily in general.
Okay, so Uh, just to rephrase it, if I get it. So if the Bayern were higher, you would choose a more passive line because you think that there are don't likely to stack off, and they will play continuously with me. Where in case this in this hand you say, okay, they're stack off too light anyway, so you can play for stacks. Is this correct?
Yeah, because, well, for example, if I would be in the big blind here, and this would be the action, and hero here or open raiser would be c-betting, I would never be check raising like top pair type of hand for value, or, well, never
Yeah.
raising that, because it would be quite absurd to be making it for value against early position opener that is c-betting three-way in this sort of flop. So when
Okay.
if I check raise, it will basically be some bluffs and then something that beats, so it's going to be some two pair plus hands.
Okay.
So the
Because
point is that
the
if you
thing
have
is,
like pocket aces and you face that check raise, you are going to be in awkward situation. But anyway,
yes, I would officially always stack out stack. So in these cases, with these bad players, I would stack off anyway. So and this is I think this is exactly what you meant. Okay, I can see this. The thing is, what I would like to mention. You say there are fishies. I would play my aces this way, so I can stake off with this one too. But my thinking is that I just want to build a pot if I'm sure that I will win this hand. So this is my way of thinking why I should choose a passive line on the flop too. And if I hit my hand like this, like it happens with my straight, then I would tend to stack it off.
yeah.
Uh,
And one thing about those like ace jack situations here, like against sensible opponents, the problem is that you might not get that often any weaker hands to call when you shove, but again, in these games, they can definitely be happily calling two pair hands. And here,
yeah. Okay. Yeah. I may stack off too light in these situations actually.
this is a kind of interesting situation because I think we have to stack off with how little our stack is, even though
Hmm.
it's not that great because we are quite easily dominated, but this is something that you would basically we basically have like 750 to stack off for pot of 4,000 or so. So we only need like less than 20% equity or 20%. So this could be like check with the Equilab if you want, but let's see.
Okay, no, it's clear. You just use this to stack off. I'm fine with that. Actually, the stream is a little bit laggy. I have to refresh it lots of times right now.
Well, unfortunately, I can't really do much about it.
Yeah, okay, no problem at all.
So in here we
No
have
worries.
really active looking opponent raising, so we definitely want to shove here for value. We might have some for
Yeah,
equity now and then, but
I think this is goes without saying. We have to take this spot. And this is close. I think I've missed a nice. Yes. Oh, nice. I just resteered that. Okay. I'm glad that I did it. I wasn't sure actually if I took this spot.
yeah. Well, here we have 30 big blinds, so I think we can 3-bet shove here, or So if we think about small 3-bet sizing, it should be like 1600 or so. So yeah, it would be pretty committing anyway. So I kind of like to just 3-bet shove in this spot.
Okay.
And here we have 2 limpers. I would be ISO raising here like something like 1000.
Okay.
I think folding is pretty weak considering that, yeah, we have unknown opponent limping UTG, but I think this game seems to be so fishy that we can assume that his range is still going to be relatively wide. And of course, like, if this guy happens to be limp shoving, we can still fold, and of course against this guy we have to stack off this smaller.
You mean, yeah, do I stack off both the small blind and the second limper? Yeah, or I have to, yes. If there's, it's Daiki and...
Yeah, this one and this guy we can definitely stack off. This button player, these guys would be kind of close, I suppose. If we raise to 1000, so it would be 3000 to goal. So I think we probably would need to stack off against these guys as well.
Okay. Do you mean just button and cutoff? Yeah, is that correct?
Yeah, and I mean.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't see it. Sorry, I had to refresh. I didn't see which guys you meant. Okay. Yeah, I get it. Okay.
Jack 10 call, that was quite interesting. Yeah, I think we can go through this one and then probably. Yeah, this one. This is so small that we can fold, but like 4 or 5 type of hand I would still be completing here. Against 3 big blind open, this is kind of. Lap is asking about the pocket 10s, but well, I think we can still shove like pocket 9s here as well, but smaller than that would start to be pretty questionable. Queen 10 suited I would call if this guy was min raising, but against 3 big blind I suppose it's going to be. And we also have the big blind here that might be quite easily shoving, so have to fold that one.
Okay.
This is really nitty. Should be open raised, and we can then call off against the small blind and pretty much fold against other people as default. But it's still
okay.
You have the blocker and suited ace, so it's a bit too strong to be folded. And here again, I'm too smaller sizing. 3 big blind with these 20 big blind stacks is just unnecessary. And yeah, pocket 4s, definitely we want to be shoving 20 big blind. Alternative line against some people could be to limp and shove against small raise, but it's kind of awkward if we face shove after the limp. And well, open shoving will be always clearly plus EV. this is hands that I would be just open folding because we have pretty aggressive looking opponent. Of course, sample is small, but 60/30 is not exactly passive looking opponent. So, and this hand has crappy post-up playability, so just open folding.
Okay, yeah, this makes sense. How do you think about raising it? Just versus pretty nitty tight opponents, or?
Well, if we are against really tight opponents, I suppose we could be making small raise to like min raise up to 2.5 pp raise, but usually I would be just open folding. Against some passive opponents, I might try to also limp and step line, but I mean, I kind of prefer more to have like 8-6 off compared to this sort of crappy queen.
Yeah,
still have more possibility.
Yeah, this is I'll overvalue them a little bit because versus fish, I'll tend to play close to every hand because I can take lots of pots away post flop. But with this kind of hands, it's even versus really fishy players sometimes pretty tough to do it, actually, even if you are playing okayish post flop, I guess.
Yeah, you don't want to, like, of course sample is small, but I think with this sort of statistics you can be quite certain that he's on the aggressive side, and that means that you don't want to try limp too many hands, and also you want to balance the limping by trapping some portion of time, definitely.
Okay.
So ace king, yeah, I think shoving or making small raises is both are reasonable. I would personally prefer a bit more small raise because we are still at stack depth that it's not going to be that awkward. But if we have like 13 big blind, 14 big blind, shoving is definitely fine option.
Okay. So is this the same as an SNGs? Because I tend to shove with less BB in SNGs as I would do in MTTs, actually. Is this a correct assumption, or can I just use the same amount of big blinds when to start shoving?
Well, of course, especially in these full tables, ante is quite a big deal. So if we think about anti-adjusted big blind, it's going to be 700 big blind. So that way you can think about shoving, but at the same time, like there is kind of contradiction in a way that if you think about it like that straight away, because like if we think about that big blind would be 700, that we move the ante to the blinds, then min raising in that scenario would be 1400. But because obviously we can raise 800 or 900, for example, here we are not investing quite as much with the min raise. So in that way of thinking, I think it's kind of faulty way of thinking that you want to just shove or fold in this sort of stack depth. That quite many seem to think that way, but
so you prefer to raise small here to let them flat call dominated hands to extract more value post flop as you would do with shoving directly pre-flop.
No, yeah. In the long run, it's going to be okay if they flat, but also when we raise small, they might 3-bet shove hands that they fold against the open shove. So we in general get a bit more action by raising smaller.
Okay. Yeah, this is what if I'm not shoving. The thing is why I am a little bit scared to do raise small is that these fishes create large M-way pots. You know, what do I do with Ace King offsuit if 3 people cold call or 4?
No, yeah, but the point is that if you get into that sort of situation, the correct reaction will often be to just check fold. If you are against
On the flop.
Yeah, like if the flop comes something reasonable, like it's not extremely dry and so on.
Okay, I can see that. Yeah,
in here, Ace 10, I would personally shove here. Villain has not been extremely aggressive, but this is chip EV situation, and we are against hijack open. So this is actually a hand that we could check with the.
Yeah, this is the clear shove. Definitely, this is too tight for me. I would shove down to all. I think probably any pocket or close to. Maybe I fold trace and deuces. I think ace 7 suited, ace 8 suited should be a shove. And king queen, king jack, king 10 suited. The king 10 suited plus king queen should be a close one, but a shove. I would fold king 10 off. Yeah, and king jack off. This is really close. Yeah.
Yeah,
King 10 off is a fold.
Nash range is now, of course, villain might not be quite this active. Let's say that we tighten it somewhat.
Yeah, this sounds related to me. Yeah, even queen jack suited, but as I said, the small edges I would pass, I guess, with these kind of in these kind of tournaments.
Yeah, well, the tricky part is that even if the game is soft as it can be, you have to 14 big blind. So if you are start passing even the small edges, then you your edge start to actually become quite kind of questionable, because you can't be waiting too much with this sort of stack, and so I don't really like that sort of thinking that much. When you are shadow stacked, you just need to take most of the situations that you assume to be plus EV. I think this is actually can be quite close situation. Seems like we have moved the table, so we don't have a read on the opponents. I would assume that this is perhaps tiny bit outside of the Nash range.
The knight A, yeah, it's outside. I'm sure of it. But
well, these
are unknown players, and they have to call at least around about 18 to 20% to make it minus EV. And I think that they don't call this light, and you can adapt to that even versus unknown players by shoving a little bit looser.
Yeah, here we're gonna see that Maniac off would be absolute break even with the Nash ranges, and Big Blind, for example, is calling 34%, which is pretty wide. I think most of us will be folding like crappy suited kings and that type of hands.
I think most of the time they're never calling this loose.
Yeah, most of the time we will be making small profits by shoving that one.
Yeah.
And those are situations that you want to take. In here, if it was folded, I think it's also a decent shove spot with the antis in play. So yeah, I think after this game we can probably go through. There was this one game that was in the end game that you won actually, I think. So we can think about the end game action here.
Okay, yeah, this is a hot a hot $1 tourney, and yeah, I've won it, and it's a pretty old one actually. I've developed old one. It's from January or February, and I've developed my game a little bit more. So yeah.
So we have 600 hands here.
Yeah, this is 7 hours. You have to make some jumps, of course.
Yeah, well, one thing we can do is I think we can define the blind from somewhere. So that's actually something that I haven't used usually.
Yeah, I think for these kind of filters you can set Poker Tracker is better than Hold'em Manager. It's so easy to set these filters. I see Colin do this all the time, and you too. It's really nice, actually.
Oh well, I think we can use also just
yeah,
plain old manual style. So let's start from somewhere around. We have 1 hour, so I think we don't want to take too much of the hand. In the end, 2 hour.
you even see at which time I played them. Okay, yeah, this is kind of night grind.
Yeah, there is a lot of variance, obviously, in these massive fields. I personally tend to prefer smaller field games, but
yeah, me too. But I think you have to. I want to build up my MTT skill from the start. You know, I don't want to jump too much to get a feeling how the micros work, what the changes over the buy-ins, what adjustments do I have to make. It helps me to see the difference between low stakes, micro stakes, and the other ones. So I can figure out easily, is this actually a fish or not in this game? It helps me a lot from playing SNGs, so I can pretty fast say this guy's bad. And this is a skill I had to develop at this time. It's 4 months away.
Yeah, so basically here we open, which is standard, and Will Lane makes min 3-bet, so we are not folding anything. And he checks back here, so basically you have 2 options here. You can check fold, or you can try to bet turn, bet river, but I don't really like lying to bet one street in this sort of situations, because most often the Will Lane will be calling the one street if he checks this sort of flop. So I'm personally fine with either line, but the good thing about, like, if we think about hands that I would bluff here, obviously for turn it's better if we have the flush draw ourselves, which opens from the turn. But if we think about the situation that we bet Will Lane call, and then for the river bet, I actually prefer that we don't have club in our hand, because then it's more likely that the Will Lane has hand that has the club, which will more likely fold on the river bet. And this is kind of reasonable hand in a way to bet, because we have the gut shot and we do block something like ace king type of hand that might be trapping or so.
Yeah, I think ace jack is likely to bet, and I have no club in my hand, so he can fold a club draw. Actually, yeah.
Yeah, that's the point for the river bluff more, but yeah. And it's kind of a question that if we think about, especially if we think that the villain is type that he doesn't usually check any A or rarely AX or better, we can put nice pressure by betting the turn and river. And also it means that we can bet most of our AX combos or better as for value in the same line. So
Okay.
but I'm fine with just folding as well.
Okay. Do you would have bet your pocket pairs like any pocket pair in this spot that I've raised with? I would definitely bet my kings if he checked flop, and I tend to bet my jacks probably too.
There is not really too much points. I mean, when you bet the turn here, your value range should be only AX or better, and you definitely want to sometimes check the AX also, because then you have some clear check calling. I mean, let's say that you have pocket kings here, which you should never have, to be honest. Because
I should four bet pre-flop with them.
But anyway, if you had for some reason like misclicking pre-flop, but it doesn't really make too much sense because yeah, you can get called by weaker hand, but you can't really go for 2 street of value, or at least it would be extremely thin. So you can, if you have pocket kings here, or let's say that you have king queen that you could definitely have, you can go for check here. If the villain check turn, you can 10 bet river quite safely usually, or you can go for check call here with the king queen type of hand, and then evaluate the river. But anyway, but you don't really want to value anything weaker than ace here. And yeah, here calling with these absurd buttons is just totally fine.
Okay, yeah, I can see why you choose this, and I think it's nice. So if I'm getting this correctly, if I can't bet turn and he checks turn two, if I had for some weird reason kings or jacks or tens, I tend to bet river because I have one street of value. This is correct.
Well, at least with the kings, I think again, pocket tens jacks type of hand would start to be on the marginal area, but it could be reasonable to bet like a small bet, and it can work as sort of blocker bet at the same time. Because if you have like pocket jacks, you don't really want to check. I mean, you can check, but if you face big bets, it's kind of awkward situation.
Yeah, this is really awkward. But as I've learned recently, good players tend to value bet thinner. So I'm always searching right now for river spots that I can bet for thin value. Yeah.
And here I would definitely protect his hand against small raise. Like Jack 7 off, I would still defend. Anything weaker than that, we can give up right away. It's not a problem. But like any suited Jack, for example, or basically most of the suited hands, but really crappy suited hands are fine to fold here. But if you have like let's say 7-4 suited, I would defend, for example, or some 10-4 suited or something like that.
Okay. Yeah. So mainly everything what's tend to be playable.
Yeah, because the price is good. So in here we definitely don't want to fold Jack 9 suited from the bottom. So I can see some merit in just limping, but usually I would ISO raise here, because especially in this situation there is decent chance that you get into heads up pot against this villain from position, and by being heads up pot you have much bigger chance to win by not having actual made hand. But if you limp here, it's going to be 4-way pot quite easily, and then you kind of have to have something.
Okay.
But
yeah.
anyway, fold would be the last option here for me, because this is pretty nice hand from this position.
Okay.
And we can see that this guy has like 7-8, which is total crap. Which is not surprising when we have 54 hands and villain is 56. Of course, he doesn't raise anything, so he can have monsters as well. But the thing is that it's just mathematical fact that he mostly has quite bad hands with those stats. So in here we have ace queen. How are you going to play this?
Yeah, I'm rating this and get called. So I think with either a club or a no club, I'll tend to c-bet this. Board is yeah, it's a flush draw, but it's no straight draw, so it's not that wet. I guess I would tend to bet around 40% of pot as a c-bet here.
Yeah, I think it's quite close because button will tend to have quite a lot of stuff that connects here, and it's not really connected, but it's kind of connected. So especially if the villain continues with a lot of gutshot type of hands, then our fold equity is not going to be good here. And at the same time, what turns are good for us? Like if we hit the queen after betting and he calls, it's spot where we are often in kind of awkward situation, and then we can't really, without club, we can't really double barrel much at all on the most of the turns. Like even if we get like jack or 10, that gives us gutshot, it will also improve his range quite often. So I would tend to prefer checking here, and check folding is not big crime. Yeah, we can be folding best hand, but our playability on this board is just not that great. But he does fold.
Okay.
So yeah.
By the way, I think this is the final tale.
Yeah,
We're watching right now.
Yeah, it might be.
No, I'm sure.
Okay. It's pretty deep stacked still.
Yes, it is, and it runs a pretty long time. I've checked that. It runs 2 hours or so.
Yeah. So I like the flop check. Betting doesn't really achieve anything that good. In here, I would just call because you don't have really clear value bet, value raise hand, and you then have some easy calling hand on the river. There is definitely against this min bet, there is definitely some argument in raising as well, but there is just a tiny bit of problem that we will be building a pot with relatively mediocre hand overall, and then if something happens, for example that we raise to 80,000 here, we'll then call and make some donk bet on the river or something. It can lead into kind of awkward situations. But once he checks here, I would definitely value bet the river. But we are aiming basically against some jack X type of hand, so I wouldn't go too big. Like I think something like 70,000 would be 80,000 sort of maximum. But it kind of depends, of course. If you think that he never has better hand, which is often the case, and he's call happy guy, then we can definitely go for like 100,000 or a tiny bit over. Yeah, we had the split hand, and that's not. We don't try to get split hand to fold here.
No, I just called it down, and yeah, I didn't put him on a 10. I guess it's likely that he value bet stronger. Yeah.
Yeah, and again here so. I'm not too big fan of the betting because big blind can have quite a few better hands, and this guy seems to be also kind of player that is probably quite call happy. So question is, do you get any better hand to fold by c-betting? So I will just check here and mainly try to check the showdown. And if we hit the king or jack, we can definitely go for choose read value.
Okay.
So now we end up checking, pretty much giving up. Well, I suppose you could try to represent ace here, but he could also sometimes have the 6. Well, of course you need to be ahead 10% of time, but kind of hard to see that you would be ahead, but I suppose it's possible.
Yeah, 4-6 off. Yeah.
And yeah, this is something that you want to note here, that he min bets with the nuts or second nuts. So we definitely don't want to think that his range is capped when he makes that sort of play.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, it's kind of weird play, yeah. But
yeah, as I say, I mean, small bet does make sense, though I would still make it somewhat bigger in his shoes. But the thing is that if he bets small, he can go for thin value bet with relatively wide range. And then if you try the bluff raise, he has also the nutty hands in the small bet range, so it can make sense in such spot. But yeah, sizing should be a bit bigger still. So yeah, that was fold. Now, this is actually a spot where you could consider making like 3-bet, and this guy actually seems quite wrecky. Quite wrecky guy from the statistics. And these guys behind are not at least huge calling matching, so we don't have like VPI P50 guy behind. Which is good that they shouldn't be cold calling against the 3-bets quite as often. So I would sometimes go for like 3-bet here, and sizing wise I think something like 120,000, 110,000 would make sense.
Okay. 120,000, that's 3xing, yeah, okay. I can see this. I have the ace blocker, the flush draw if called, and it's a clear 4-bet, 4-to-4-bet. Is correct?
Yeah. Yeah, and you have the position, so it gets, at least if the villain is decent, he shouldn't be too happy to call that much out of position either, so it goes. And also the stack depth is, or stack situation is kind of good, that even though he is one of the big stacks, you are also the smallest stack here, so he shouldn't think that you are too hesitant to stack off either, because you are clearly the smallest stack, so you don't have that much ICM concerns. Just decent spot if you want to do that sort of. Which is definitely, at least in higher buy-in games, is something that you want to implement.
Yeah, I think that in this case, if you look at the 3-bet stats, there it's pretty they don't three bet this much in this journey actually, and I think you can definitely make some value by three betting lighter versus the right person. My problem with three betting lighter is you have to choose actually the right player. Pushes tend to give you spots that I don't want to end up in, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. Like if you compare, for example, these guys that on your left, they seems to be kind of passive from these statistics. They have quite relatively big VPIP, but they don't play aggressively. So I would give more respect against these guys' open racing range compared to this guy, because he's playing aggressively when he plays. And yeah, Lamp is commenting about the range advantage, and that's always something. That's basically the thing that all the poker actions basically come into. That you aim to define some sort of range for the wheel lane and go.
Yeah, this is the same now.
So here we get flop is check. This guy checks again. So this is pretty nice spot to be. We don't have showdown value. We have pretty nice blocker with the queen against like hands that will definitely call bet, and we have decent equity. So I would personally bet like 100,000 here and put some pressure on the wheel lanes. Now that he bets 60,000, we have 8 outs basically, so we don't quite get the direct spot odds, but
do you, if I bet 100k in there, do you stake off if raised? I don't want to stake off actually.
You can stake off
this spot.
If you bet and they raise, well, of course, if they like min raise, you can probably call, but if they make any bigger raise, then you have to fold here because you have zero fold equity most likely, and you are not priced in for the call. We only have 8 outs, which gives something like 18% of equity. So,
yeah, for example, and the outs are tainted too.
Here we don't quite have pot odds. Of course, we might have some implied, but it's kind of questionable because if the 8 or king comes, we probably mainly want to donk bet, I suppose.
Yeah, I'll choose. I hope that I actually folded it because you may have the implied, but if you discount the odds by not having a heart, so you have to discount some odds, and my pair odds are not clean too. So I like to see me fold there.
Yeah, it's kind of close, and that's one thing that it's nice bluffing hand. So I would prefer to take the fold equity to myself.
Yeah,
and it's also one thing you want to think about here is that when the villain check and check the flop, he will usually cap his range somewhat. Of course, he can have like king queen nuts here, but it's unlikely that he has overpair set 2 pairs that often. Where in your shoes you can definitely have most of the 2 pairs. You can have any straight. You can have some sets, I suppose, as well. Yeah. So your range is not capped. So you can represent a lot of strong hands. And for example, if we bet here 100k, we lane call, what is 330k, we can definitely consider making like even shove on the river with our blocker to king queen type of hand. And most of the lane range will be in kind of awkward situation.
Okay. Why, if I understand this correctly, you think about if the lanes or your own range is capped or not, and if I knew this, I can go for decisions based on that. You know that the guy who bets 60,000, his range is not capped because he is likely to give us more action on earlier streets, whereas my range is his range is capped and my range should be not capped because of that I can have the two pairs because I don't raise them pre-flop. Whereas if I had a monster like aces, kings, jacks, tens, I should have raised them pre-flop too. So I'm a little bit capped too, but not capped in hitting this board. This is what you mean. Is this correct?
Yeah, we can have like most of the two pairs and sets. I mean, if we have like pocket nines, pocket tens, and we are 30 big blind deep, it's kind of questionable. Do we want to be stacking with 10 pre-flops? So we can definitely have even those. And definitely we can have two pairs or king queen or 7-8 or 8 queen. All are in our range, so we can represent huge amount of different value combos, and then it's nice to add this sort of no showdown, decent equity bluff into your semi bluff. And yeah, you can also like flip the situation. Let's say that you are this guy here. Here you check the flop with, let's say, ace jack. You hit the jack on the turn. You face 100k bet. You call it most likely, or I don't know if you raise, but let's say that you call and then you face shove on the river. And you can think that how happy would you be in that situation. I'm not saying that villain would be folding many jack X necessarily against our line here, but the thing is that basically the bluffs don't need to be profitable by in themselves that you would get enough fold equity. The thing is that you have so much different value combos that if the villain never folds like jack X, then your value hands will be making huge profit.
So. And if I bet myself the 100k and I'm not improving on the river, you just give that up. Is it correctly? Because I don't want to bluff a guy with stats like this. Because they tend to call to light, actually.
No, yeah, it might be, but yeah, you can think about in different scenarios, like maybe you give up total blank river that doesn't complete any draws, and you can then bluff, for example, if it comes like 6 of hearts or most of the heart combos, that you can then represent the flush combos as well that villain might not have as often. But yeah, the way of thinking that you can't bluff certain villain without actually seeing that he made some really absurd call, I would try to prevent that sort of thinking personally, because you can definitely have.
Can you? I didn't get this acoustically. Can you please rephrase this? Do you bluff this guy on the river with, and if you bluff him, which kind of ace do you choose to fire a second barrel on the river then?
I mean, for example, if the flush draw completes, it's going to be a scary card for the villain, unless he has the flush.
For both of us, actually, yeah.
Well, yeah, but. Yeah. Some portion of time villain would probably save it if he had the flush draw, usually. So you will have way more easily those flush combos. Or for example, let's say that the river is 7, you could have the 8x here a lot more easily. So you could bluff that one, and maybe you just want to give up most of the rivers that don't complete any draws. That way you will still bluff sometimes, but not that much necessarily. And of course, like this sort of situation, again, it's better to bluff with the queen X on blank river, because then you are blocking hand like king queen, which the villain definitely could have. In a way, well, you can kind of think it about either way, I suppose. that if you have the queen, you also block villain from having the queen X draw. But yeah, but that goes kind of complicated.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, I just fear that he just calls down to the river with a 9 or even a 5 because he just thinks, yeah, I have a pair, so bam, I call you down. Bam.
Yeah, that's possible, but I mean, you also, this is final table, so this guy has come through, I don't know how many 100 or 1,000 player field, so it's somewhat less likely that he's total calling machine. Of course it's possible, but it's somewhat less than in the early game.
Yeah, yeah, that's correct. Yeah, you're totally right. You can assume this, but from my experience, it's not necessarily has to be this way. There are weird kind of variants, final tables where you think, how did he actually manage to do this long time?
Yeah, it's true, but
it's less likely, yeah.
I wouldn't see bet here. Again, you don't get many better hands to fold. Also, when you have the 10x here, you have postal playability, so there are a decent amount of turns that give you straight equity as well. And I kind of hate the situation if we face raise here. Of course, we don't have that much equity, but it's not like we are folding huge hand if he happens to raise. But yeah, it doesn't achieve that much. And in general, if you want to bet here, I would use smaller sizing, like 50,000, 60,000.
Yeah, it's a little bit too big. I can see this.
Yeah, if you think about the situation from the AX portion of our range, for example, I would be much more happy in general to bet hand like ace 5. That is going to be way less likely to improve in any way on the turn. It's much less likely that it gets any straight draw for potential, for example, or if you have the 5, hitting the 5 is going to be a lot worse compared to hitting the 10 with the ace 10. So
yeah.
Also the kind of
let's turn this around and say, why not see that because of its pure value? I block the straight combos, and he is likely to 4-bet bigger aces and or monsters. So I can just barrel for value. I think if I barrel here and turn bricks and I barrel again, it's close that he has something to call. You know what I mean? Normally, I would check turn. If he calls this bet, I would check back turn to realize my equity. But what if we barrel turn again to fold out any pair he has? Of course, he doesn't fold Jack X, but maybe he folds 8X and the pocket pairs.
Yeah, well, I would say that it's quite unlikely that he's folding 8x that often, and I would say that it should be quite less likely that he folds 8x here compared to earlier hand that we talked about. Villain folding like weak paired here.
Okay.
This is the definition of calling matching type of player. Also 50/0. And this is also a guy that doesn't necessarily 3-bet anything at all pre-flop, so he might have totally uncapped range even after just calling.
Yeah. Okay. You said that you actually hate to get raised in this spot. I think if we get raised in this spot, I rarely think that on this dry board the lanes will do it as a bluff, at least on this stakes.
No, yeah,
So
I don't hate it like that. That we would have huge amount of equity against his range, but it's just that compared to the possibility that we check the flop and take our possibility with the showdown value and possibility to improve with some straight equity and so on. Compared to that, I kind of don't like the situation. But yeah, of course, like if you do bet and face the raise, then you have clear fold with that hand. But so yeah, definitely.
Sometimes I think this is not too bad to know if I can forward, you know.
Yeah, calling here, and if he had checked, I would definitely bet myself. And he uses min bet, so we have to call again, and now we hit the straight. So yeah, this guy was playing the nuts, but this is backdoor flush completing, so most of the time we have the best hand. So this is mandatory value raise.
Mandatory value raise on the flop, you mean?
Raise on the river.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, I just waited for the stream. Okay, yeah, of course.
So here, yeah, I suppose that the sizing is fine. This guy can probably call with 2 pair type of hands.
Yeah, backdoor flush is unlikely.
5-9, okay, well, he doesn't need 2 pair, it seems. I would complete here as well. We want to try to get into pot with this sort of fizzy guy. Of course, hand is not great, but it's a good price.
Okay.
It's 9, open raising. So yeah, here you want to think about what do you do if you face check raise after c-betting, but in general, when you have good middle pair, I most of the time will be c-betting because you will be getting value from quite a few weaker hands. But for example, if I had 8-9 here, I would often check back it. And if we bet and he raises, I would be calling against that.
Yeah, I think board hits its range ridiculously good, and I think checking back is fine too. If he ends up betting turn, I call reasonable bets and re-evaluate river, and yeah, if both turn and river breaks, I may even call down, because I think if the lanes tend to bet their draws, and he is kind of aggressive guy, and the river and turn breaks out, they tend to fire tend to overbluff the spots. You know what I mean? In this case, it's a pretty bad turn card, but I think if both of them brick, they tend to overbluff.
Yeah. Of course, one thing you can think about or should think about on the flop is that when you have like ace of hearts, there are less dangerous board runs possible. So from that perspective, it does make a bit more sense to check this ace-9 compared to some ace of diamond type of hand.
Yeah, okay. It's like Honigmund or David always teaches that you have check back check back your nut flush tours to strengthen your check back range. Yeah, according to that, it's also a check range. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one thing, but more often I would still be c-betting ace-9 here, even with the hearts. Anyway, we'll check here again, and you check here, but this is again a situation that you definitely want to think about betting, because the thing is that big portion of players would be, at least in my games, betting 10x, or like most of the better hands here on the turn for value and protection. So big portion of time we have the best hand here, but there are a lot of ugly rivers, so I would definitely consider, and most of the time bet here for value. And now we obviously have to...
How much do you bet, and what do you do if you get check raised on a board like this?
Well, I would bet like 50,000 or so, and yeah, getting check raised is always kind of dependent of the will lane. Will lane against some people you can just give respect, but it depends. Like if we think about this hand, we don't really block that many semi-bluff combos. Will lane could be check raising, like any Queen X, 8X, Diamond Draw. Not really. It's not bad blocker to have the A of Hearts either. So it's kind of reasonable hand to call against the check raise, because we don't block any of his possible semi-bluffs. And yeah, I think sizing-wise that is totally fine. I mean, it doesn't matter that much, even if we bet like extremely small, because like if he doesn't have 10x or better, then we often don't get call for much smaller bet either. But if he happens to have something like that, then we usually get call for bigger sizing as well. And in here, basically on the earlier spot as well, I think we could use bit like 70,000 sizing, but it's not a huge deal. So this is again, this is much more drawy board this time, so I would definitely check back this one.
Okay.
And this is one of the issues, that most of the turns you are going to just check back and will lane, and of course here we are happy to check back. All the draws have busted. 5-6 solid draw.
Oh, how do you think about the c-bet with ace-10 suited? I think it's a pretty pretty close one actually. I don't like my c-bet actually too much.
Yeah,
I think I can check back.
As I said, I would be checking back because, well, this guy probably can have anything when he check calls, but in general, this is very coordinated flop. Usual limp calling range will be hitting somewhat greatly on this board, so I wouldn't assume much fold equity. And we actually see that he's calling with idiot and gutshot straight draw here, so we can expect that we really don't have much showdown value. Luckily for us, he doesn't bluff either, so he doesn't get us into tricky situations. But there is also, like, if we check the flop and we'll lane check here, there is some argument about making small delayed c-bet for value and protection. Yeah. Because will lane has shown weakness, he's less likely to have like Queen X type of hand at least, and so on. So it's basically for denying the equity and thin value bet.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
That grab we can fold. So yeah, we want to just complete and try to set mine. Some crappier stuff. Yeah, this is kind of awkward situation. It's kind of nice hand to call from position, but at the same time, when it's final table, I would probably be nitty and fold here. So I think calling is reasonable as well.
Okay.
We had huge hands here.
Yeah, my reasoning for folding was that the guy on the button has less chips than me, so I don't want to spew off Yeah, and what okay, he even jams, so I nice dodged it.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons which makes it really awkward to be defending. So I definitely don't mind. Don't mind folding, but it's just that those type of hands, if you want to call something that is not like strictly premium hand, it does make decent amount of sense. And personally, I would be betting a bit smaller here, but. So against two people, I wouldn't be afraid of this BB guy that much, but this guy calling from the gut off definitely tends to have something decent. So I would probably check here and see what happens and just give up here. I mean, if it goes check and turn is something blank, we can think about making small value bet. But I think just that if we bet here on the flop, this guy will so often have something, and he doesn't necessarily fold like queen 10, king 10 type of hands here.
Okay.
Well, this is just check, check, check. And you can definitely fold this sort of total grab. But yeah, hitting top 2 helps.
I think he missed a value bet there with ace king.
And yeah, I think this is totally fine from these positions. So of course the problem is that this guy is probably never limp folding, so we are getting somewhat big pot with hands that plays pretty poorly.
Yeah,
I would just try to check
definitely borderline.
I would just try to check to showdown here because this guy is extremely passive, so possibility that he bluffs us off is pretty small. So, and it's, well, we can get called by weaker hand, but
this is a bad turn bluff. This is a league that I've covered. I don't bluff paired boards anymore.
Well, I don't think it's problem to, in a way, to bluff, but we have showdown value, so we don't need to necessarily bluff.
Yeah, definitely. This was before my recognizing showdown value times. Yeah, okay, sure he's got it. Interesting that he is not value betting river actually.
And 4-6, well, that is hands that you can definitely fold pre-flop. It's not hands that you necessarily want to defend here. And this is going to be mandatory 3-bet shove. Yeah, don't do this sort of stuff.
Okay.
Well, yeah, this is pretty loose open.
I hope it.
I would be open folding king 7 off.
Okay, okay. The 8 you 3-bet shove directly because it's out of position and because I thought I'm too deep.
Well, you are not too deep. You have only 20 big blind bit over with the antes.
Okay, yeah.
And the thing is here
that that's clear 3-bet shove.
Well, when you use it 200,000, you obviously never fold because you are investing 1/3 of your stack already. So it's not like you likely induce this guy to shove with total crap or something. So if we want to use non all-in sizing, we should or small sizing, we should use like 150k here. But the thing is that let's say you use this sizing, William calls. There is going to be 2 overcard flops decently often. Well, you are kind of committed anyway to the pot, but I think you see the point that if the flop comes like ace jack 5, it's going to be kind of awkward situation still. So
yeah, I totally agree. Do you shove deuces there?
yeah, I would shove any pocket pair, any suited ace.
Yeah, okay.
Something like ace 9 off, probably. This is pretty active guy, and he's also one of the bigger stacks. And something like most of the broad
king 8 suited.
Any suited Broadway, king 10, king jack off, and then some suited connectors like 8-7, 9-8 suited. Personally,
I like that. I like that. I am
because the thing is that you are one of the smaller stacks, so the ICM is not really a big concern here.
Yeah, this is correct.
And yeah, Lap is commenting here that before bluffing, you should ask yourself what pair hands William is probably going to fold and which force hands he should be calling. So that's basically one of the basic rules. That are you betting for value or bluffing? This is kind of close in a way that small blind shouldn't be hitting here often. Big blind is, but you have kind of decent seven of diamonds, so I can see point in going either way here. But yeah, these crappy offsuit hands aces I usually fold, and this is also kind of different scenario now that button is the smallest stack now, and yeah, that is also quite questionable open race, but yeah. I would fold that one as well, usually.
Well, there are defended not this much to open raises, so I guessed that I had to loosen up a little bit to catch up with their chips, and this is totally the bottom of my range there in this kind of spot.
Yeah, but one thing that is when you are the cutoff, you are open racing against this guy that he has been really active looking, so I wouldn't assume that he's necessarily folding that much. And then we also have this guy that is still 36 VPIP, so I would be kind of surprised if he's folding that much overall either. So kind of interesting spot here. Well, you can go either way in my opinion. You have some showdown value. A good side of calling here is that if you hit the 10 or king, it's way more likely to be good if you just call here compared that you raise and he calls. But
yes, it's the same reasoning like before for me. It's checking with a bet, so I'll tend to make my C bet, or in this case my raise anyway. Yeah, and in this case I'll with the flush draw, backdraw, or straight draw, I'm hardly thinking about stacking off. The reason why I've just not to do this is there's an ace on the board here. Fish is likely to overcall weak aces pre-flops, and if I don't have my king as an out, then or my 10 either, then it's getting close that it's plus EV, I guess.
Yeah, I think you played fine here, and I mean you can use, for example, let's say that if you had like 10-6 or 10-8 or Jack-10 with the clubs you have way less showdown value, and then you can use those as bluff if you want, or semi-bluff. But of course you have to, if you have strong draw, you have to stack off here if you raise anyway. That's one of the things with busy players as well. Like basically good player here on the big blinds would basically never donk bet. That's one of the things. And busy players can definitely like donk bet, and they can play any AX as nuts. So it's not like we necessarily create any fold equity against the AX either. So those are reasons to take the passive line and try to realize the equity.
Yeah, I think with this board and the ace on the board, and most of the time these small bets indicate draws from the lanes. And I guess if you had a spade draw to a club draw, we may block our outs. So I choose, if I'm not sure, I choose the passive route. Even on the final table, especially on the final table.
Yeah, and for Lab is commenting about all in river bluff. Basically, in this situation, this would be kind of awkward hands to do, or very bad hand, because you basically, if you want to bluff here on the river, you don't want to block draw hands from the will lane. And also it's the reason why this is bad hands to call the river anymore. And I wouldn't be surprised if he turns something like 9x, maybe even 7x sometimes here for weird.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think this bet is just too large to call again. I think with a third barrel, he is likely to have something like 9x or 7x. It could be a combination between the club draws and something like 10-8, 8-6. But yeah, well, I don't see myself compared to the equity for a call. Yeah, this I think it doesn't fit. I feel that it doesn't fit. That the price of his bet is too high to call the river. For me, if you min bet, I snap call this again because I'm not falling to min bets at all. Like can't be bet to not fall into min bets.
Yeah, that's kind of true when it's often like you need to be good 1 out of 10 times. You are losing like 7 out of 10 times at least usually, but it can still be plus EV.
Yeah, it can. It can. You're right, but it's
yeah. Folding here is pretty bad. I would be always shoving basically, unless Will Lane is making some totally absurd calls. But I mean, you can also limp here.
You mean the 8-5? Yeah. Yeah, I agree. If I see this now, 4 months later, I always shoving this totally. It's I'm about 10 dB. My shoving range should be at least 75%. I guess it's close to 80%. I would say, and 8-5 is of course clear shove. I think maybe even any suited two are good.
Yeah, it's actually quite surprisingly wide range for the villain to call.
Oh, 50.
I suppose the reason is actually here that our stack is so small compared to his stack that he doesn't have any ICM basically tags in this situation. So our range would be only in the FGS 50%, but 8-5 suited will still be pair lit here, and I mean, villain is probably not calling 33%.
You choose a 180 man to analyze. Does this fit for our large MTT?
I'm not really sure, but I think it should be somewhat close anyway.
Okay.
I don't have any personally made custom ranges here, but
okay. Yeah. I'll do this by myself. I always copy the great tourneys that I'll play. Mainly the top heavy and flat tourneys, and write them into the software.
Yeah, that's of course better one. But I would suppose it's relatively close anyway.
Yeah, actually, I think one or two kickers, they differ a little bit, but not too much.
Yeah, this is actually kind of awkward situation because this guy has been quite passive, and he was also. I don't think we have fold equity necessarily by shoving. I think this is kind of spot where all options are pretty close to each other because calling we flop so rarely anything decent that because the flop playability is so poor with these hands. But
I see. I like to see myself folding pre.
Yeah, I think folding is reasonable, but I would say that any option, shoving, calling, folding, I wouldn't assume they have much difference overall.
I think the baby offsuit A this you should fold, but something like A6 off you should rebet and 3-bet shove.
Yeah, we can actually check what the hold'em resources is.
Yeah, do it. You can check it. I'm pretty sure it's kind of this. Maybe I'm wrong. I think with 5BB you have to do it with any ace, but with 10 BB, I guess you.
So yeah, if the villain is open raising 36%, then it would be like tiny bit plus EV if he calls. Fold something.
Yeah.
But this is again like if we assume that he's basically never folding, then or he's folding less, then it's going to be minus EV and or I suppose it actually stays somewhat plus EV.
Yeah.
So the question is that
really close.
Would he open 36%? But I actually don't see this guy raising that wide.
Me too.
I think folding is totally reasonable option here. And we have some crap. Always nice when you get wall with 9 deuce off.
Yeah, I agree.
So would you call here?
I think I would like to. I don't see it right now. Yeah, do you mean the 8-5 or what do you mean?
King 6 if the villain shows here. Small blind.
I'm still waiting for the stream. Sorry. I can pull off the hand myself. King 6 in the big blind.
Yeah.
I guess I folded this one. What would I call? You ask.
Yeah, he folded. If the small blind shoves, would you call?
Okay. What do I call? I guess I would call, of course, any ace, any pocket pair. How much PP? It is 7. Any ace, any pocket pair, king. King 4 suited, maybe even any king, any suited king, depends on this guy. This guy, I would put him reggish, so it's any king, any suited king, king 6 off at least, maybe even more, maybe even king 3 or 4. Any suited Broadway you have to call. You may fold jack 10 off but with 7BB you can call this too. So okay, now I see the stream again. This is really wide. I wouldn't have called this wide actually. So
yeah, I just watched that, and this guy seems quite freaky, so it would be definitely called.
yeah, 50%. Wow, this is ridiculous. I just would have called I think 35, maybe 40. This is ridiculous wide. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't know if he shows he has open folded you 3 times in a row, I think. So yeah, I think this is fine show. No folding.
Ooh, 7-9 could be a shove. Suited. No, if I done that one. I did. Okay, this is good.
Yeah, we have currently on the King 10 off. I think the stream is again a bit on the slow side, but open raise will lane call. Again here I would personally see bet a bit smaller. This is quite common.
Yeah.
I think that people tend to use, they kind of use the automatic half pot see bet. So and yeah, thanks for
I totally agree.
for commenting.
Yeah,
A
this
bit
is
smaller, like 60,000 would be my preference here. And of course stacking off once he raises.
Yeah, I totally agree. I fixed this leak already. This is a dry board. I have to see bet less. With him, I don't need this much. I totally agree. And I would stack off, of course. If it happens that he has King Jack, King Jack, or I don't know, Ace, King 10, or oh God, if it happened that he's got Ace 10 or some kind of set, then it is this way. But I will stack off most of the time.
Yeah,
I think I just stacked off with him too, or did I? I think this was a hand where he stacked off. Yeah. Do you think he is correct to stack off with 10-8 suited on this board?
well, for that, well, it's definitely going to be plus EV, but again, in his shoes, I would kind of ask myself that if he shoves all those 10x, he will have hard time to be calling. And thing about 10-8 suited is that it will actually have quite nice playability on many turn cards. With the 8 of diamond,
Yeah.
you can turn so many draws and so on. So it's kind of protected hand in a way. So I would personally kind of prefer calling, but there is definitely some merit in shoving as well. It's not going to be minus EV at least. In here with the
I think he's isolating himself actually with his check raise on this board. So
yeah, well,
I
maybe
think
you call some weaker hands, but main portion of your calling range will be beating his hand. So
yeah.
And in here with the queen jack, I mean usually I wouldn't bluff here because this is actually spot where if we bluff this sort of air kind of hand, we are actually over bluffing because we have so many a decent amount of hands that has more possibilities to improve. But I'm not saying that this is necessarily minus EV bets. I mean, if he folds like a AX type of hands here to this bet, then it's going to be plus EV anyway. But kind of spot that you want to ask that does this hand necessarily make that much sense to be bluffing? But because you can have a decent amount of straight draws, you can have some flush draws to bluff with. So in here, I will try to set mine personally. We are deep enough for that. And sometimes we can win the pot even without hitting the set. So. And also what happens quite often when we call here is that the big blind will call as well, and we get more implied odds for our set mining.
Okay. Yeah. It's more than 15 times. Okay, I can see this. Yeah.
Yeah, we can't really do anything with the trees here. For example, here with the pocket aces, you could go for even smaller C, but it's as dry as flop can be, so I mean some players would bet even like 50,000 here. Personally, I would tend to go like 60-70,000.
Oh, okay.
But once he calls, this is kind of situation that we want to increase the sizing and think about what sort of sizing we want to use so that we can basically shout the river. So if we use 200,000 will lane calls, it's going to be 800,000. So we have pot size bet at that point. So quite good sizing, I think, would be like a bit over 200,000. So 1,000 like 220, 230,000. So we get a bit less than pot size bet for the river sub. So I would go a little bit bigger, because now we have like a bit over pot size bet. But the thing is that when Willen calls here twice, he has 10x probably quite often, or some sort of pocket pair, so we just want to ship it anyway. But he doesn't call.
Yeah.
And 6-8 I would personally. Well, I would still call. We are so deep that we can still defend. I mean, we are clear second stack, so we can somewhat tighten the defending range, but in general, in this situation, against reasonable opponent, I would be limping huge amount of time because we are second stack against clear chip leader, so I want to pot control with most of my range. But I think against this guy, he's not going to 3-bet you basically ever. You can raise for value or limp, I think both. And thing is that he's probably overfolding against raise also, so don't mind the raise at all.
Yeah, and he's quite passive guy, as I would recall, and not that active post flop too. So and he never 3-bets. So yeah.
Yeah, in the pocket nines we open pre-flop, both blinds call. Flop c-bet is totally fine. I think sizing is okay as well. On the turn I would be checking back because it's quite tough for Willen to be calling with weaker hands here. And I mean, if we check the flop turn, we can then think about if we want to value bet the river or call against bet. But now we have pretty clear check back, but he actually bets. But sizing is quite small, so it makes this kind of tricky.
Yeah, I think that I would. The intention was bet for free showdown. Yeah, So I think if I bet turn, then I have either a clear fold or a free showdown, and this is about, I don't know, 30%. What he bets there, a little bit more, 35, 40%. And for me, I'm not good often enough to make this call. I think I didn't make it in game, but now I wouldn't call. Also, it's too big. Bet is too big.
It's kind of awkward because what is he bluffing here with? And also when you have pocket nines, it will decrease his chance to have like 10-9 that he might be bluffing with.
Yeah, I block his
Of course,
straight outs.
he might maybe sometimes have some 7x that is counterfeited and he's turning it into bluff or something, but I think it's kind of close because at the same time you only need to be good like a bit over 20% of time with the ICM.
Yeah,
And sometimes people can do weird stuff and they might actually bet with like a high.
oh, that's a call. Wow, I didn't remember that. Okay.
So
And actually, he's passive. He's really passive. So I didn't think he's bluffing too much there.
yeah, it's
Um,
also
Jackson.
his passiveness probably makes it better to fold, and also as I said, this is kind of stupid hand to be calling theory-wise, but
Yeah,
often
such
like
a clear three bet for him.
yeah, but as I would have played it so that I would check the turn and then evaluate the river. Most of the time I would bet decent sized bet at least on the river or value bet myself, but
Do you, let's say I would have checked the turn. Do you value bet this river?
yeah, I would bet the river small if we checked the flop. Pot would have been for 400,000, so I would bet like maybe something like 150,000 on the river for value. If they will check here. And also the thing is that when you check the turn, there is a bit more chance that he was just calling with some weird 2 overcard hand on the flop and tries to bluff 10 on the river, compared that you bet the turn and kind of force those hands to fold.
Yeah. By checking turn, I keep it the range wider. Also, yeah, I see. Okay.
9 jack, we should always defend here. Nice playability. Almost min raise as well, so. But not sure how many hands we still have.
I don't know.
There's not a huge amount, I think.
Around about 50.
I would probably go a bit smaller here, but anyway, raise is fine, obviously. And mandatory defend. So now we have the option to check raise or check call.
Yeah.
This guy has been c-betting 14/15 times, so he has c-bet in this sample almost always. So I would go with, if I have this sort of statistics, I would definitely go for check raise here. And sizing wise, I would use something like, well, check shoving isn't absurd, but I might also do like 280,000 and shove any turn pretty much if he calls. But it's not big. I think either of those options is totally fine. I'm not saying calling is bad either, but it's just that if the villain is such that he's c-betting extremely often, then the chances that he has queen x or better is going to decrease somewhat. Theory-wise, this is actually sort of spot where we could donk bet as well, because we have way more 7x than the villain has. So this would be kind of decent spot to make smallish donk bet, like 130,000 or something like that. We can still fold if he raises, and we have pretty good chance to get, like if he has, let's say, ace 10 or something, we have decent chance to get those type of hands to fold.
Okay.
And also we kind of decrease the chance that he now makes sizable bet that we can't call against. Okay, now on the river. Well, I don't love to bluff with these sort of flush combos in these situations, but at the same time it's relatively dry flop, so I don't think it would be bad to bluff here. Get like something like 200k or something like that, because that's something that we would do with decent amount of queens and 7x. So I like that play.
Yeah.
And this guy keeps folding. So yeah, let's go this to the end, as it's quite close. Quite close. Well, this is a bit too weak, I think. It can be quite close, I suppose, if the villain is shoving as wide as he should. So with the Nash ranges, he would be shoving 57%, and Queen 8 would be tiny bit.
It should. It's. I think it's borderline. You may call it.
Yeah, as default, I would be folding.
Yeah.
But if you have a read that villain is shoving extremely wide, then definitely it's going to be plus EV. But basically never bad fold, I would say.
Yeah, these decisions. I tend to be on the safe side. If I'm unsure, I've just folded, and there's too much on the stake. If I'm wrong, I knew that he is loose enough, but I don't know that if this call is okay for something like 14 BB or 11 or 12, something like this.
Yeah.
In an SNG, I would snap him off, but yeah. I'm kind of reluctant because that time I didn't knew final table ICM too well. And if it's different,
it was a good folds here. And with the king 9, it's mandatory up to the river, call pre-flop, call flop. Turn is kind of tricky in a way that the flop is extremely dry, yet villain is betting, so I don't mind folding here. We have good amount of AX in our range also, or should have. So I don't necessarily mind folding here. But calling is reasonable also. This is kind of interesting spot because now we have the practical nuts. So the question is, how big is he calling with the AX? So against some people I can see point in shoving here, because some people are just unable to fold AX in this sort of situation. But the thing is, it's extremely hard for you to have air here. So I would, against this sort of player that seems quite decent, I would probably go like 300,000 or so, because I kind of maybe a bit bigger, like 350 or something, because I think if we go like pot size or bigger, he might be folding quite a lot of AX. But I think we want to go bigger. He's going to still call if he has decent AX, as he probably has quite often. So
yeah, if he is an ace, it doesn't matter how much I bet. Actually, not too much besides shoving. So yeah. I think this is too small. I would like to see me bet around, like you said, 300, 350, 400. Yeah.
When he folds here, I think he often had some air this time.
Yeah.
It's just that people tend to be quite passive, rarely bluffing overall in those.
I think so too. Yeah. Decent players rarely bluff rivers as a race, you know. So I think there are not many bluff raises on the river, so this is the correct sentence. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking about when he bets the flop and barrels the turn on that extremely dry flop. So
yeah, if you yeah, this is correct. But he was kind of guy who doesn't shut down, I guess, at the turn. His turn c bet was, if I recall correctly, pretty high.
Yeah, of course, samples it's too small to really tell. But like in this sample, we have 6 times that he has had the chance to barrel the turn. So it's kind of hard to say about those usually. In here, we'll lane check, so I would basically always bet here with the ace-3. We want to protect our hand and get the value. Now that he bets, it's actually kind of interesting situation. Our hand is almost always the best one. So I would probably go for the raise here.
Yeah, okay.
But now, basically with the call, we want to bet big here. I think, again, if he has the king, it's the way we have played, we have so rarely the AX that we want to bet big here, like 300k or something.
Yeah, I definitely underwrap my hand, yeah. What kind of button did I choose?
Well, 7-8 we could definitely open raise. Chip leader is not going to abuse us in any way, and it has decent post playability. And now he limps. Yeah, I would usually just check back this sort of hand. Usually you want to raise kind of polarized ranges in these situations.
Yeah.
And well, in here, I think both, kind of all options are actually kind of okay. Folding isn't absurd, but it would be pretty tight still. We can use this hand as raise fold hand with the gutshots, or we can also call, and if we call, there is much bigger chance again that jack on the turn will be good and so on.
Do you raise fold this spot versus anybody or just versus this guy? Reggish guys.
No, yeah, I would tend to raise sometimes. More often, I would tend to use like 8-9 type of hand that has even less like future playability in a way. But now that he checks, I think this is spot that we definitely want to bet here. You have to also remember it's limp pot, so we definitely want to be betting here most of the time with our queen X type of hands. So it's not like we are only representing AX or better. So I would bet like 100k around that here. And that was well played. Overall, I mean the flop is fine either way, I would say. Yeah, well, this is hand that I would more often fold. it has quite pure post-flop playability. So, and I'm not big fan of this. Again, it's extremely dry flop. But the point is that we don't want to bluff this often. That's the main point. But if we want to bluff, if possible, we want to have some nut potential. So 4 or 5, for example, would be great, and we have the guts up to nuts. Or if we want to do something else, then some sort of let's say 7-8 suited with backdoor flush draw would make more sense. But this hand, we have pretty much nothing going on. No possibility to improve on the turn and so on. So just give up on the flop or check and see if you happen to improve or something.
Okay.
And usually, like, especially when we are playing against Reki type of player, when they raise pre-flop and check this sort of board, they are not usually planning to fold against single bet, because basically so many or this flop favors his range so much more that making small c-bets with a lot of air hand is going to be plus EV. So when they check, they usually have some showdown value. So it's not good idea to attack it that wide necessarily. Or you want to have some potential to improve to something that you can continue barreling on the turn. And for example, 5-4.
The exception is that he is just too tight and folds it anyway, I guess.
Yeah, if you are against like a really straightforward type of player that is c-betting when he has it and checks often when he has the air, then that sort of player can be good to stab against with lot of stuff.
Yeah.
This is actually a spot where you can definitely consider bluffing with the gut shots.
Yeah, and backdoor flush draw.
Well, I mean, on the turn flop check is totally fine, but turn when we get the gut shots here, it's kind of tricky when there is that smallest delay. Yeah, 3-betting here is fine, but I would use a bit smaller sizing. And you want to definitely think about, are you calling against 4-bet?
Yeah, well, I think this is close. If I would call a 4-bet, actually, I don't know. And this is better that I don't know, I guess. Casually, we are 40 BB deep. It's ridiculous deep. If we are like 20 BB, I would snap this off if he shoves. But with 40 BB deep, I don't know. It's probably plus EV, but I won't feel too well to call a 4-bet shot versus this guy. I would put him on a range that crushes me through, I guess. Oh, God bless you.
Yeah. So with these ranges, if they will lane 4-bet shoves 10% of range, which is pretty rare. Ace jack off.
Did you zoomed? Okay.
Yeah, I probably did at some point.
Okay, yeah, I just was curious. Maybe I misclicked.
So yeah, I don't necessarily mind the 3-bet here, but I would use a bit smaller sizing, like 260k or something.
260. This is 3 and a little bit more than 3. Okay.
Yeah, and I would probably fold against 3-bet. That is one of the arguments also for flatting, because it's kind of a borderline hand that it's ugly to be 3-bet folding, to be honest. So this is also a reason that you can consider just flatting. It has its downsides as flatting, but
this is correct. Yeah. Yeah. If you four, I think so too. If you 4-bet shoves, it's really ugly. If I flat, I have to play a hand out of position, but his raising range should be wide enough, I guess, to play this.
And also one thing to consider is that the big blind is so tight that he's going to be overfolding in the case that you call, most likely. So you are not getting in the sandwich position as often as you should be.
Yeah.
And here, nice bluff. I would tend to use bigger sizing, but I think against this guy it doesn't matter that much necessarily. And I would bet here again, personally. You have also blocking the flush somewhat, so, and you can definitely be value betting 9x, 10x here for value. I think sizing wise something like 250k or something like that, 300k would be fine. But of course, you can also argument that he's tight and we can give him credit. I don't know. So I don't think giving up is necessarily bad either.
Yeah, I think it's pretty close. In game, this was my reasoning, but I can see why you think we could barrel River 2. Yeah. It's tough for him to. I can reasonably represent 10x here. I don't think that he is guessing too bad. So I don't think if I barrel the River 2 that he is necessarily put me on 10x and fold accordingly. So yeah, and I could have the flush draw, but I blocked the flush draw myself.
Yeah, and here we limp Queen 10, totally fine play, and bet with lane raise. This is definitely too strong hand to be folded, and calling is basically the only option. And I would be calling here again and calling most of the rivers.
Yeah. It just feels like a call down.
Yeah, raising, like, I mean, 3-betting flop would be just too thin, and at the same time on the turn, if you check shove here, yeah, maybe he calls like sometimes with weaker Queen X, but
yeah, I think on dry boards I fear to isolate myself too easy.
Yeah, that's the problem in general.
Yeah. So, and I have a nice deck, and I want to keep it this way.
This guy is pretty weird. I mean, he was before calling against your raise from the small blind with King Queen and called against the huge 3-bet shove. And now he's limp calling 3-4. So I suppose he was.
This is, yeah.
He tilted.
It sounds like tilt. Yeah. You're correct. I think this is really tilty what he does, because maybe it's just frustration. I think 50 hands ago he had 3.5 million, and yeah.
Yeah. So in here we defend pre-flop, check call, definitely standard. We have some showdown value with the king high, and check raising doesn't really make that much sense overall. And this is again clear check call.
Yeah.
And well played hand. And when Willen shows the hand he had, we definitely want to note that he's way over bluffing.
Yeah. Guys on these stakes or on micros, the Rex on micros tend to overbluff a lot. and they don't adjust correctly to other regs. So yeah.
On the 5-8, we what we did, yeah, we open raised and C betting is totally fine. I would use a bit bigger sizing actually this time. It's kind of drawy board. And on the turn we get the top pair, so I would usually continue value betting here. But once you check and will then leads the half pot, we definitely call here all day long. And this time he actually had the hand.
Well, what did I say? 7x? Yeah. No, 9-10, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, next hand we defend 9-jack suited combo draw. And we'll lane bet here. Well, we can definitely check raise, of course, but considering that this guy was betting that deuce 4 earlier, we can definitely also just call. We have some showdown value with the jack high.
Yeah, I think this guy's so aggressive the whole tourney. I don't have to voluntarily put money in the pot. He's just doing it by himself.
Yeah,
like pretty much.
And you don't need to necessarily like play bigger bots than unnecessarily big bot against this guy. Anyway, and correctly. Yeah, if he has King X or better, I don't see he would be folding on. They were pretty much. Yeah, river is fine to bet, of course. I was thinking that against really aggro guy, I might sometimes look for check raise as well. But I mean, we have some busted straight draw that we want to bluff. So I can see merit in it.
Yeah. I think I wasn't sure this time that he pull out the bluff. And the other thing is, if he has a Queen X for some weird kind of reason and King X, he might pull the trigger and race on the river. And then I just put it in and stack him off. This was my reasoning with Jack 9. So I hope that he raced me on the river to pull it all in, and yeah, this is the thing. I don't think he can fold King X or Queen X in this spot.
Yeah, to the extent we have 10 deuce off, so this should be just open folded right away. You don't want to play that sort of crap against player that is likely defending wide.
Yeah, okay.
And King 8, standard defend, and now we definitely want to check raise here with the top 2 with the flush draw board.
Okay, I just called. Yeah, okay.
But now I would go for the delayed check raise at this point. Well, of course we can hope that Will Lane is just bluffing again with total air and fires the third barrel. The thing is that we are deep stacked, so the problem of just taking the passive line is that the pot is going to stay relatively small often, so that's the main issue. And now we actually can't really donk bet here anymore, so we should be checking and probably just check calling.
Okay.
The thing is that if we check raise from the flop right away, and if the villain has like King X, we have big chance to stack him off here or double up. And I don't know, maybe he would be called. I think there is quite high chance that he would have a bet called with the 8-6 as well.
How do you the other nice benefit of it is that he, as we both agree, he is a little bit thinking. And on this river, if I don't value bet and let him bluff, he see that I've got top two, and he sees that I expect him to bet river again. So I think he should be, if he is thinking, quite curious to don't over bluff his hands, and this is quite good for me because I force him to play more honest and can bluff myself quite a bit more, just for the metric game
Oh
thinking. You
yeah,
know what I mean?
I wouldn't go too far with that sort of meta play thinking in general, because
Okay.
you never know that how far the villains are thinking. And so yeah, pre-flop, well, we can open queen 3. I think flop is kind of, I don't mind the small c-bets, but one of the issues is that villain is probably not folding too much better hand. Of course we get, it's nice if we get pot down against the weaker hands as well. But like king 3, for example, I would be just checking back for the showdown value on this flop. And of course when we hit the queen, it's definitely calling spot. Raising is, I think raising is fine as well. I think there is big chance that he is value betting and calling with the 9x here. Yeah, this is just one of the issues that we have to fold at this point, unless we just don't believe the guy. But he can have the trips here. And he had it, so I mean, I think value raising is fine, but calling against the 3-bet is going to be pretty questionable option at that point, because really very few players are firing the bluff here.
Yeah, I agree. This is probably a bad role play. Yeah.
And here definitely we should be 3-betting with the kings. I mean, with shallower stack I don't mind to balance with the call, but we are like 30 big blind deep, so we definitely have space to make 3-bets as a bluff and for value, or as like 3-bets. So I would prefer to just 3-bet here. But now he checks, we should definitely start betting, and I would use something like 120 to 140k. It's not very drawy board, so we don't want to use as big sizings. 90,000 is just too small.
Okay.
In my opinion. Of course, in a way, smaller sizing you use, the more value bets you can basically have, but
why is that actually? That the smaller the sizing, the more value bets I can have.
no, because villain is getting the better pot odds to call. So if you have sort of too many bluffs compared to value bets, then you are going to be over bluffing with the sizing, considering the pot odds villain is getting. So because of that, bigger the sizing, bigger your sizing is, more bluff combos you can also have in your overall range.
Okay.
And because of that, like if you bet small, villain is going to call wider. So because of that, or villain should call wider. So because of that, you can also widen into more weaker hands to value bet. So the sizing kind of comes down to what sort of range you have in each situation. Like if in some situation on river you have a spot where you are basically having not full house or air, you can basically bomb it with really big sizing.
Yeah.
I think here I would tend to use bit smaller sizing still, but of course it's kind of drawy board, so it's not unreasonable. And here we definitely can't be folding here. If you 3-bet shove here, you are basically isolating yourself against 8x or flush draws usually. So I would be bet calling here on the flop. And yeah, of course it's kind of ugly that there is a ton of cards that will random check raise bluff can be hitting. But at the same time you want to remember that if he has random 2 overcard, he has 6 outs, which will have the chance to hit on the turn roughly 40% of time, so it's going to be pretty rare. Of course there is a small chance that villain is check raise calling with some 4x, but I would be usually just bet calling.
Okay, I'll bet call with the 5-5s. Okay. Or bet call or bet call or bet shove. Bet shove.
Bet call is my line.
Okay, bet call. And what do I do if overcard hits? You just fold turn.
Yeah, if it's random overcard without spade, you can just call again against his bets and keep his bluffs in the range. If it's spade, then you can definitely consider just folding.
Okay.
And pocket deuces, how deep we are? 40 big blind. I think it's kind of close.
We are 20 BB.
Yeah, we are 40 big blind here, deep, so I think it's quite close. We can definitely consider about 4-bet shoving here against this guy. He's probably 3-betting as 3-bet folding range, or has 3-bet folding range. So, well, it's kind of awkward for the big blind. If you had like 30 big blind, I would definitely raise 3 and 4-bet shove here. But I don't mind necessarily folding that. Kind of interesting spot when he uses half pot sizing, because the thing is that he is quite active, so king is relatively often good here. But the issue is that our chance to improve is pretty small, so I don't mind folding against that sizing. And again, deuce 10, we should be just open folding.
So you open for king deuce off, or do you defend this?
I mean deuce 10 from the bottom.
And
again, usually I would be check raising to check 4 on the flop. On the turn, I suppose it's kind of closer, but the thing is so far that he hasn't really fired the third barrel, at least in this sample, so can definitely see some decent, good merit in just check raising here. You can even check shove overall, but well, these are always kind of weird. I mean, of course, the deuce is kind of blank because the chances that you are calling pre-flop and flop and turn with deuce x is quite low. And also the case here is that you are actually now losing against overpairs, which are still plausible in his range. So as played, I will be just checking here.
Okay.
But he calls, so he probably had. Well, I suppose it works that way as well. I was thinking that he has the jack or better here, but yeah.
Yeah. That's the benefit of calling streets. Yeah, I kept his range wide. He just bluffed a close to dry board, continue in betting because he hit a six. And on the river, I just shoved to him, and it looks like that I weirdly want to wrap a deuce, and your reasoning was too correct that I can't have a deuce, and so he ended up calling with a six, I guess.
Yeah, happened to work this time, but I don't necessarily like to line overall. But yeah, standard
Yeah, okay.
standard 3-bet here with the nines, and we want to see bet sizing is good. We lane calls. This is nice spot to be checking because you have locked down the board here. And if he has the jack, obviously you are going to stack off him anyway. And by checking, you allow him to bluff. And he shouldn't really have at least 3x. And if he has like pocket tens or better, I think he might be value betting it anyway. And yeah, if we are betting here, I like sort of smallish sizing, though I think I would still go a little bit bigger. I want to basically choose the sizing if I choose to bet the turn to give him the price to continue with the flush draw still, but I think we can bet a bit bigger still, like 450k, and he will be calling with the flush draw, and probably 500k as well. And yeah, here again.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know really because on the earlier hand he did call that 7-6 on the river, so
yeah.
I suppose he might be calling here with some random 3x or a high or 10x if he somehow has it. But you have also the option to check here if he has Jack X, he will be betting himself. If he has busted flush draw, you give him the possibility to try to bluff you.
Yeah, King Queen will bet, I guess. Yeah, tens are unlikely. Yeah, King Queen, of course, and 8-7 is unlikely too.
Yeah, well, obviously we call here with the pocket tens, and he loses. So that was the last hand.
Yes, this
and
is
his shove is just absurdly bad.
Yeah, yeah, it is. He shoves for 20 pp.
For 40 big blind.
40 big blinds?
Yeah. If he has 20 big blind, it's totally fine, but with the 40 big blind, it's absurd.
Well, he has 40 big blinds, sure. Well, let's see. He's got 40. Oh yeah, with 40 big blinds, close to. Yes. Okay. Now my stats are upgraded. Yes, 40 big blinds. Yeah, that's ridiculous.
So basically, what I would say about this overall, I think one thing is to look about that c-bet sizing. At least in these hands, you were kind of overusing the half pot sizing. You were kind of tight in some situations, like facing small blind raise with Jack 8 off type of hand. You definitely want to defend that. Then, for example, here in the heads up against this sort of player, he's not folding much. So, like in here, if we look about this, his fold big blind to steal has been 1 out of 9. So we definitely can open fold the crappiest 50-20% of hands. That's totally fine. Like the crappy offsuit hands. Suited hands you would generally want to play pretty much all of them, unless villain is like really aggressive. We didn't really have really shallow stacked heads up here, so limping is quite big portion of that. But we are most of the time pretty deep, so wind raising is usually better strategy with that sort of stack depth. What else? Yeah, well, on the post flop, always try to think in ranges. What sort of board favors your range? What favors will lane range? And from that you can construct like sensible strategy, like when you want to bluff and when you don't want to bluff. Like for example, that against this will lane you bet the flop with that air ball jack 4 offsuit or something in the ace 9 3 flop, which is
jack 5 off,
which is totally bad overall. It can be okay against some really bad players, but any sort of recce or unknown player, you shouldn't be doing that sort of stuff. And well, we didn't really have any like 3-bet situations. It's of course in these sort of games, most of the player pool is fizzy, so you want to have value heavy ranges. But especially with the some reads that you get from HUDs, that if the will lane is recce looking, you can definitely implement some of those. And yeah, probably against unknowns you want to be quite careful with like 3-bets. Chances that will lanes are just not able to fold anything is probably quite high.
Okay. This makes definitely sense to my feeling, where I should work on definitely, as I said, the pot size manipulation errors I already fixed. These bluff spots, you were totally right. I have to choose my bluffs with equity, definitely. I'll tend to bluff too often without equity, and these thinking in ranges to make a correct game plan, I have to practice it more, because it helps to make better decisions. Okay.
Yeah. Basically, yeah, I would be kind of careful with the idea, which came up here as well quite often, that will lanes are like never folding in certain spots. I personally find it often wrong assumption, and I might get surprisingly often folds against somewhat fizzy looking opponents as well. But of course, if you see the best read in general in poker is that if you see will lane go to showdown with something, and you can for example against this guy we saw that deuce forehand that he was c-betting the 7, 8, 9 board. That's quite. I don't actually mind the turn c-bet necessarily that much, because when the board is like, I don't know if we could find that hand.
Yeah. Okay.
Find that hand quickly.
I have another question that I would like to ask, if you're searching it. We always, if we are playing Rex, we always talk about balance your ranges to play it balanced and play close to GTO style. But I myself, I think it's tough to recognize the sports versus regs who are played unbalanced and play exploitive to abuse it. Maybe I'm doing this subconsciously, but I don't do it. I don't know. Yeah, no, I'm doing this. Yeah, this is.
Yeah,
How
well,
is that?
I would say that in general, extremely many Regi players as well are in general under bluffing in a lot of situations. Probably myself included in quite many cases, because often in GTO strategies there are quite a lot of bluff combos found in quite dry board as well. Like it's often really easy to underbluff in those drier boards especially. But I would say that what was the idea? Well, it went offline till stream for some reason.
Oh. Yeah.
I missed the points now.
Expect.
So yeah, anyway. Shortcut. What was I explaining about?
You was explaining how that players underbluff or Rex tend to underbluff some certain spots, and I think we can use this to know that most players probably play more honest than they should, and according to that, we can assume that bets tend to be more value heavy than bluff heavy. So we can make a mark for players who we think who are bluffing enough GTO wise, and players who are not doing it accordingly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
like
think this is.
Well, anyway, my point was also that like for yourself and for many players, when we talk about GTO, basically how you learn GTO style is to follow the games other people are good players are playing. You can learn from that, but also about using different sort of GTO calculators to analyze huge amount of different situations if you want to get like really close to the GTO type. But the point is that you don't really need to be playing GTO against most player pools. But basically, when you think situations so that you think about through those situations from the ranges and the sort of blockers you have, you will kind of find those decent spots to be bluffing or good spots to be bluffing. And even if you are probably going to be under bluffing quite a lot of situations, it's not going to be problem because it like when we talk about GTO, that we need to be playing that exactly or close to it, or that we play totally exploitable way. Those are two like extremes in a way that really often good players also will play in a way that they are going to be somewhere between that. So they will be using some bluff combos, for example, but they are probably not going to be using necessarily all of those combos that they think could be plausible from the GTO view and so on, unless they are playing against another really solid player. So I wouldn't worry about like aiming for GTO type of play, and it's impossible anyway without studying a lot of it.
Yeah, I think for me it's not important to play according to the style, but to know players if they're doing it or if they don't do it, and according to that I have to learn it a little bit more or learn it a little bit. But I don't think, as I said, it should be the main goal. The main goal is to play max value. And max value is often to be exploitive in certain kind of spots. And yeah, I just want to know GTO because I want to know how or at which point I can exploit other players more,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
guess.
that's solid points. That it's kind of a shame that if we talk about GTO in the post op or like situations on basic shoving situations that we might. It's good to know about what is the NAS range, but we can alter that depending of the people. So yeah, that's basically the same concept.
Yeah, I totally agree. This is exactly, you have to adapt your ranges to certain players, and I think it's pretty much the same with GTO. It's just another tool you can use to play more exploitively.
So yeah, let's think about. I was pulling this hand because as example.
Yeah.
So Willen playing here with his deuce four. Obviously, he should be mainly open folding. He should be checking this especially because it's pretty high possibility that you are going to continue on this board as it's so
Yeah.
connected. But I don't necessarily hate his turn bet here because he has quite a good chance to bluff out a lot of single pair hands. Like if you have, like, let's say even that you have a hand like Queen 9, you might be folding here. Maybe. But if you have like, well, Queen 9 has the good side that it has the gutshots to the nuts, basically.
Yeah.
With the jack.
I guess I would. Yeah.
But if you
I guess
have,
I would fold some 8x and 7x.
yeah, if you have like King 9 type of hand here, it's actually kind of awkward situation to be in, unless you know that the villain is bluffing a lot. So in a way, in this sort of situation, it's kind of reasonable bluffing hand because it's basically not low. So whatever he gets to fold, it's definitely good for him. But if we think about, like in his shoes, what is the most sensible type of bluffing hand on this turn? They are obviously going to be the hands that has chances to improve and doesn't have showdown value. So if he has like 9 jack, 9 queen, for example, that is definitely check back hand because 9 has still decent amount of showdown value. But if he has, let's say, some flush draw like Queen 5 of diamond or Queen 3 of diamond, that's really great hands to bet here on the turn with a lot of nutty outs. Or he could have like Queen, some random Queen X, like let's say that he did bet the flop with Queen 3. That would be quite reasonable with the gutshots to be betting here on the turn. And so on. So and the kind of same situation in a way that in certain situations, let's say that we have a situation where we have, for example, checked to river, flop and turn goes check, and we have some extremely weak hand. Like let's say that we had this board and it was checked to the river and we had 4-5 suited here. It would be quite decent bluff combo because it's the absolute, at pretty much the absolute bottom of our range. We are playing the board. Or if we have like some sort of 4 card flush, there's like 4 diamond on the board or 5 diamond on the board, we can use just bottom of our range because usually at those situations, like if there is 4 flush on the board, we can't block obviously the flush because at that point we have the flush. So in those situations it just kind of makes sense often to choose the bluff combos so that they are just bottom of your range. That has no or very little showdown value.
Okay. Yeah, I see. We have talked about in the forums on a hand that you played with a mono board or four flush board, and I suggested to barrel it off on the river. And I think this is the same reasoning. Yeah, you said my bet really accomplished nothing, and this is the thing. Yeah, it was too good to bluff with, and here it's pretty much the same, I guess. Or yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I think there was, of course, like this sort of that we go randomly through the hands. It's not going to be specifically into any certain area. So there is like, it tends to be that there is kind of mess of everything, everything talked about. But I think there are some points that you can use anyway. And if you want, for example, private coaching at some point in future, we can then focus on some certain area more accurately, and so
Yeah, I would like to do this, I guess, in the future. Definitely. I think my way of studying is a little bit, I would say, yeah, I study everything at every time. So yeah, I think I can definitely be more efficient, and I could definitely, if we have to talk about the conditions, of course, but I would like um, give more order to my studies to get better. Not only with MTTs, but yeah, with the other stuff too. But I think SNGs, I'm playing okay. Just moved up to tens and twenties, and I'm running okay there. And so I'll try to get better at my bottom end. So with these things I can not do so well, and this is definitely MTTs right now. And spins I'm not too good as well, but I think they're quite off. Both formats are really have a lot of variance in it, so maybe I'm just not used to it.
yeah, well, the point is that whatever you play MTT, essentially, a lot of the concepts are more or less the same. There are some ICM differences, of course, but like a lot of the post-flop situations, for example, they are basically pretty much the same overall. So it's not like studying MTT hands is not helping on the SNG side as well, and so on. And the way that I often do with private coaching is that at first, like at first session, we have this sort of coaching or database analyzing type of stuff, and then focus on some specific areas, like for example, defending big blind, defending small blind, what sort of hands to three bet, specific post-flop situations, like what sort of hands to check raise on the flop, and etc. And that way you can use the 2 hour, or most common time is 2 hour in my private coachings. So it can be, it's kind of good time that there is like less time and you can't really do anything. It will go so quickly, and longer time tends to be that focus starts to lose at some point. So I think 2 hours is usually the best sort of time. And when using 2 hours to single concept, single area, then it's going to be a much more effective overall. But this sort of style, I think it's good to kind of get the general idea about the overall game and what to focus. Well, I think like in your game, it's in decent shape, like from the basic parts. there is obviously space to improve in post flop area definitely, and then I suppose you don't have much experience on like 3-bet and like races against the small blind limps and such areas.
Yeah, at least not in MTTs. Yes, yeah. Like I said, I have to bring it all together, and not only in my mind. I have to do it on the table. I have to get down to it. I would say, and I'll choose MTTs because. Yeah, this is the format to be in the future, I think. So there are the biggest buy-ins you can actually find. There are all of them are MTTs, and this is why I started to play this format actually, because in the long run there is the greatest room to improve. On the other formats, there is some point where you can play bigger or a higher buy-in. You may see it. It's if you play your own SNGs. There are not much SNGs opening for $50 plus, and even the $20 are not opening too fast these days. And yeah, this is why I choose MTTs.
Yeah, it's valid points, but yeah, of course, like especially in MTT. One of the big things in MTT sessions is to pre-plan it. So decide what sort of games you want to play, because really there is huge variance differences if you play massive fields or like let's say 150 player or something like that fields. Then there is the about planning that session that. Because problem is that if you kind of randomly choose what games you are registering during the session, is that you might easily have the situation that you are playing like 3 hours on the session, and then you register into a game that is going to take 8 hours if it runs to the end. So you might get into a lot of like single tabling situations, and that's always a bad thing basically. If that's like good chance to happen.
Yeah, well,
that to happen because of the session planning. So that's something I would recommend that kind of study that what sort of games you want to play, how long they will take if you happen to run deep, so that you can kind of, if possible, start the longest game at the start of your session, and then when you take new games during the session, then they would be always shorter and shorter and shorter. So the end time of all the games would be roughly on the same area, like between 2 hours or something.
Yeah, I would definitely like to learn to choose this accurately. Right now, I'm play 12 traded at the same time. Most of the time, I'm playing 6 MTTs and 6 SNGs, and at some certain point, I don't open MTTs anymore, and I just fill it up with more SNGs until the MTTs finished.
Yeah, well, that's one of the good ways to, so that you don't have single tabling problems. That's much.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. But yeah, I think this was decent overall mashup, so to say.
Okay. That's good.
But yeah, thanks for coming as visitor, and let's see if you want to come as future in private coaching.
Sure. We have to talk about the conditions, but I really enjoyed it. I learned lots of stuff, and I'm looking forward to work with you again. It's always good to have solid proof for my game, and I think it's great talking with you about these sports because I think that you knew exactly what to do because you factor in all the things that I may not know yet, and I hope that I can learn this from you.
Yeah, well, that's actually kind of thing in the poker in general, that there is kind of I don't remember the exact terms, but there are different kind of stage of learning, that when you study certain situations enough, you don't basically need to think about them. They will kind of automatically come from the muscle memory. So you don't need to think about that much, like, do you want to see a certain situation? It's going to be quite automatic decision. And that's something that's only comes from using the time and studying the situations enough outside of the tables. So talking about situation in forums, studying after sessions or before sessions, whatever. And once you have studied those things often enough, they become more easily part of the every kind of decision that you make on the table, and then you can focus on some other things.
Yeah.
Like, for example, if in certain situation, like, let's say that you have the situation that you call from big blind, villain doesn't see bet, and you kind of automatically know that what sort of range you want to semi-bluff at that point. It's going to be a lot easier. But if you haven't talked about why some combos make more sense to bluff and so on, then it's going to take a lot more thinking about the situation and so on.
Yeah. I'd like to compare this with driving a car. You know, driving a car is a skill that at some point you do it unconsciously. Your competence is unconsciously, and this is what you should try to achieve with all of your poker skills too. And I think this is exactly what you mean. Yeah. It's the Mind Game of Poker actually is a book I read, which there explain these stages of consciousness from Barry, the poker strategies Barry with the Jared Tendler. They do a great job with their two books. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, but yeah, this has been over 3 hours already, so.
So yeah, thank you too.
Bye for now.